Guys for sticking around during the coaching session. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at the dev Yuumi's rework. A look at Yuumi's current issues and how we're thinking about her rework. First and foremost, I'm just going to read it out loud. If you want to skip ahead just to have my opinions in regards to Yuumi, of course, I have a history with Yuumi, so I am the right man for the job. If you want to like this video, subscribe this video, or maybe show this video to your foreign grandma and just explain to her that it's about religious topics and it's all about great things because she can't understand the video, I would greatly appreciate that. So let's jump into it. Since Yuumi's release in 2019, she's simultaneously become one of the most popular champions and one of the most contentious. Yuumi is a special champion that allows new players to not only experience League of Legends quickly, but also to learn the game side by side with their friends. While Yuumi has succeeded at those initial goals, she's also been a tough balance problem at all levels of play despite numerous changes and updates. We are here today to shed some light on the design team's thoughts on our magical cat friend, as well as provide some insight on the Yuumi rework. The cat attached to the elephant in the room. Unlike every other champion in League of Legends, Yuumi has a unique mechanic that allows her to attach to her allies and remain untargetable for an indefinite duration. While this unique mechanic has made her more approachable for a large number of players and helped them fall in love with Yuumi, it also created some obstacles. The combination of Yuumi's enchanted level defenses, hyperscaling identity, access to powerful engage tools, and untargetability create the perfect storm for frustrating gameplay with little to no means of counterplay. Enchanters as a class are often kept in check by their spell ranges and low durability, which limit how effectively they can protect and support melee champions. For example, a fighter or assassin diving in the backline needs to do so without the help of a Lulu shield or Soraka heal, and are often equipped with abilities and items to help them out. Yuumi circumvents a lot of this, as she's free to jump to whichever champion is strongest, regardless of what happened in the early game. Since her release, we've made numerous small changes to maintain Yuumi's core fantasy, while limiting her presence in pro play. A few more balance changes and a durability update later, Yuumi still hasn't found a stable place in solo queue and has remained one of the premier champions in the last 2 World Championships. As a result, we think it's time to take a larger swing at changes to hopefully land Yuumi in a better long-term spot where she's better for her players, less prevalent in organized play, and easier to balance. In short, we are not satisfied with Yuumi's current state and are making progress on a rework for her aimed at reducing some of the things that make her frustrating to play against, while retaining the core gameplay pattern her players have come to love. We also want to address that we've identified as few of the primary reasons for her high ban rate and pro dominance. Losing lane to Yuumi often feels like losing the game due to her strong scaling. Yuumi's power isn't tied to her own success, so putting Yuumi behind in lane doesn't feel impactful since she can switch partners easily. Laning as an ADC with Yuumi isn't fun due to her weak early game and solo play and tendency to quickly attach to someone else. In pro play, Yuumi lacks exploitable counterplay windows relative to her strong defensive and engaged capabilities. Staying true to Yuumi. We believe that Yuumi has a key spot on the league roster when she's positioned as a champion like Garen, Annie, and Sona, who were designed to help introduce players to Summoner's Rift. These champions play a vital role helping players learn League of Legends and have a lower barrier to entry. On the other hand, these type of champions also have a lower skill ceiling to get weaker and optimize in pro play. While we do think there's a sizable player base that will love an intense champion focused on weaving between healing and shielding all 4 teammates, we believe that such a complex playstyle combined with Yuumi's frequent untargetability has been one of the sources of her many frustrations. Unattaching gives enemies opportunities to interact with Yuumi, but using it as her core counterplay mechanic skewed her towards higher MMR players. The end result was a playstyle that most Yuumi players didn't really want to engage with. Meanwhile, pro and elite players were eager to take these mechanics and maximize Yuumi's potential and hide her weaknesses. In high-skill play, Yuumi players have learned to optimize unattaching to trade their own health to accompany trades. Combined with frequently unattaching to trigger the shield of cooldown, Yuumi lanes simply had more health to trade versus enemies so that even hyper-aggressive opponents like Draven and Lucian struggled against the cat, especially with the help of the additional summoner spell Yuumi can bring. Similarly, when paired with highly mobile partners and good communication, Yuumi's Q and R became highly consistent engage tools, a power that few to no enchanters possess. Looking forward, with the above in mind, we want to rework Yuumi to be an easy-to-learn enchanter that's all about protecting and enhancing her allies. This means a greater emphasis on how Yuumi can aid her allies earlier in the game by trading her damage and crowd control for more early power and defense. We think that Yuumi staying attached for long periods of time is essential for her to serve her current players, as well as players learning the game. However, since targetability and fragility are core weaknesses of most enchanters, this work also requires emphasizing other forms of counterplay for Yuumi. These could make Yuumi's success tied to winning lane, making her skills easier to dodge, and making her less powerful and highly mobile characters. While we're still in the early stages of Yuumi's rework, you can expect to see a bit more from us next year as we make progress worth sharing. We want this rework to land our magical cat in a more stable place and maintain her core gameplay fantasy for her players. Thanks for playing with us and see you on the Rift. So I can't possibly imagine how they can achieve it, because in my mind, I think it's contradicting to itself. I believe that it's just contradicting itself, because the untargetability, and basically, if you want to keep the untargetability mechanic in the game, you need to make Yuumi so useless it's practically win trading, because the budget, the power budget should be so heavily invested into the fact that you're untargetable that every other spell should be relatively useless. I also, while I don't know if Riot Games has data on this, if beginner players are playing Yuumi and then learning the game, or if they are playing Yuumi and then they are not learning the game. Of course, if you have a friend that is much worse than you put him on Yuumi. You tell him to press his buttons, and then you're going to have a teammate that isn't practically solo losing the game, right? Because sometimes playing a champion bad and not feeding is much better than playing bad and feeding, right? Playing Yuumi, in my mind, I don't see how you get exposure to the game in a very easy, like, underwhelming manner. You get exposed to the game, but it doesn't necessarily build good habits. But I can see the world where you have a group of friends, 4 friends are playing the game, and then you have someone that wants to learn the game, and then they would, of course, play Yuumi. But knowing that Yuumi is the only champion that is allowed to do this and to be that, what kind of argument to create such an extreme outlier when banning Yuumi could expose that specific player to the truth. So it definitely, in my mind, if I'm trying to think about it, process it in my mind, I don't know what kind of data Riot is basing this off of. In my mind, I don't think that you learn the game by playing Yuumi. My main issue with Yuumi is that her power budget is, in order for the untargetability to be balanced, everything else needs to be so hard nerfed. Something that never was addressed, which I feel like is very similar to the Ravenous Hydra issue, is Ravenous Hydra didn't get a nerf on the base AD that you get from the item. They nerfed every other aspect of it, but they didn't nerf the base AD. There is a certain point where having Omnivamp is good, but there's a certain point where Omnivamp, having a certain amount of Omnivamp feels good and it's useful and it's impactful, right? And nerfing that number, while there are some cases where it matters, there's a lot of cases where having that additional Omnivamp doesn't. While on the other hand, having that bonus AD and that flat AD always is relevant, right? Think of it like this. Sometimes you're hitting targets with your AD and you are just overheating. So the Omnivamp is a less relevant factor of the strength of the item. And the same thing for me comes to Yuumi, right? In terms of what she gives, right? What she gives move speed. She heals missing health, right? And the worst of it all, she gives adaptive force. I don't understand why these things were never targeted. The things that really, really push some champions from the point of being at the cusp of taking over the game. You know those champions, right? Kayn, Hecarim. The line between being overly dominant in a game and taking over completely and being completely useless is very clear. But with Yuumi, the line of being useless, just because of that, those additional stats push them over the edge. And you'll be more frequently in situations where these champions become on the end of taking over games. And it comes down to giving that power, right? Giving that power at no risk at all. And in my mind, in order for Yuumi to be balanced, I think it needs to be so useless to the point where picking it is borderline trolling. If they want, that's the only way I see that Riot manages to achieve this. I will be very impressed if they manage to maintain the fantasy of it being some beginner noob champ that allows Yuumi to be that champion that noobs play. And they just get to play the game and enjoy it with their buddies and they are learning the game through it. Then the champion needs to be so inherently useless that it's borderline trolling to pick it in a competitive match. I don't see any other way around it. Or maybe you create a situation where Yuumi, level 1, when Yuumi attaches to someone, she just can't leave this player. She's just attached to this player for the rest of the game. And that's it. And then you shift around her W to not give adaptive force. And then Yuumi just turns every champion into Chugal from of course, Heroes of the Storm. So if you want to lane bot, you attach to your AD carry and that's it. And you are attaching to your AD carry every game, and your contribution to the game becomes rather linear. That's another way that I could potentially see it. You know? It's like you need to choose who you attach to. You maybe put a cooldown on it, and you force the Yuumi player to just play around with one specific target. That could be one way, right? And then maybe at least you have a situation where the Yuumi player needs to make a strategic decision, and you can't just be the Yuumi that attaches to whoever is fed and then you dominate the game. You just piggyback off of the snowball of somewhere else. Losing lane to Yuumi often feels like losing the game due to a strong scaling. Very true. Yuumi's power isn't tied to her own success, so putting Yuumi behind the lane doesn't feel impactful since she can switch partners easily. Very true. Imagine in a case where Yuumi couldn't switch partners, and she's still this fantasy where you're untargetable and you're just like a walking ball, you know? That could be it. Laning as an ADC with Yuumi isn't fun due to her weak early game and solo play and tendency to quickly attach to someone else. Well then, let Yuumi attach herself to your AD carry and then just make her HP like 100 and let her never leave her AD carry and just change her W for something else, and that's it, you know? In pro play, Yuumi lacks exploitable counterplay windows relative to his strong defensive and engage capabilities. Yeah, well, it's just that these abilities become just way too strong when attached to champions that are mobile, and that's the issue. I know that the top comment is going to be, Yamato didn't ban Yuumi. Hey. Sirgun12 says, make her attach more like Kalista R, but instead of being sucked up and spat out, make her R attached to a set player and give her a new skill set when unattached. Could be interesting. Yeah, that could be something, right? But then we are no longer fulfilling the Yuumi fantasy, right? We're no longer fulfilling the Yuumi fantasy of just vibing on your teammate and pressing your buttons, and that's it. You're no longer doing that. So if they decided to move the untargetability and make it into some kind of, you know, decision, then that would be fine, right? But then no longer you have the Yuumi fantasy. That would be like a complete rework of the champion. We need to look for a way to keep Yuumi's untargetability, and that's the impulse. That to me seems super hard. I gave some of my ideas. Either you make her really useless, or you make her only be able to attach to one person. Yeah, I think that it should be that you choose to... Her W not having a cooldown when she jumps between champions would be the first thing to nerf. Yeah, that thing is very silly. I think adaptive force needs to go away. I think move speed, like these stat steroids that are too varying in terms of their value is a dangerous proposition. Ara Maria, no problem at all. I'm happy that you arrived home safely, and feel free to watch the VOD, no problem at all. Please take care of yourself and have a lovely evening. But yeah, from what I'm reading, it seems like that it's contradictory, you know? I feel like either they're going to make the champion so useless that you just won't see it in a serious game, and then whenever someone picks Yuumi, you're gonna say, well, this guy is completely trolling. I have a better idea. What if they ban her definitely from competitive? I think that is like admitting defeat. I think something that the Riot needs to hold on to is that the Summoner's Rift experience can replicate itself between the modes. I think if they try to veer away from that, that would be very dangerous and also a mistake. If the normal games are not the same as the draft games, and those are not the same as the ranked games and the flex games, and they are not the same as the pro games, there is no connectivity between all of them. And that would be a very dangerous path to go down. I think Lucy's Leon, I think it's very important when you judge the game on its balance that you compare it to everything else out there. And in my mind, I think regardless of what Riot is trying to achieve here with Yuumi and our conversation we've had today, Riot has done a fantastic job with the game when it comes to balance. A fantastic job when it comes to balance. The issue with deleting Yuumi from the game is that there is skins, there's ownership revolving around this champion. Meiko, EDG Meiko has a skin for this champion. They can't just delete Yuumi. That can't happen. Keep in mind, even right now we are in a preseason, right? But looking at the majority of the year, you could play a lot of different champions in a lot of different roles. I think that the balance was quite good. And if you compare that to other competitive games, you're not experiencing the same level of clarity from the dev team and the same level of proactivity when it comes to making changes that move the game in the right direction. Give her power incentives to jump between allies. That's exactly what they've done, right? I am in the town named after a river. They have shifted the power to that. Yuumi is currently heavily incentivized to jump between her teammates. Heavily incentivized. Especially in the cases where you buy Moonstone. If you have Moonstone and Eri and you can jump to your teammates in unison with your Eri cooldown and your Moonstone cooldown, you are getting insane value. You can play Yuumi in a way where you can keep Moonstone off cooldown. Because they reworked Moonstone, right? To no longer have just a poofing effect while in combat. It requires you to act. And Eri Wing a teammate and having Eri counts as a shield. And shielding a teammate procs. Just procs. Change her W so it auto-dismounts her after 6 seconds. That's the thing, right? That's the main thing. Riot wants to maintain the fantasy of this champion being a beginner-friendly champion. That is where the contradiction lies. As long as they want to maintain that identity of Yuumi being a very beginner-friendly champion, they're going to have a very hard time to balance this champion. Either it has to be, in my mind, maybe I'm missing something. I will genuinely be so impressed if Riot managed to piece this together. That would be crazy. That would be insane. I think Lucy's Leon, your examples are very bad. So I don't think they make a lot of sense. I'm sorry. A Lysandra with 750 AP for sure one-shots people. And I don't know what kind of Akali build has 200 AP and 200 armor and MR. So you're speaking in hyperbole, and that makes me think that you have some anecdotal evidence to back up your League of Legends experience, and that is not really, something to discuss. But anyway, this was the conversation about Yuumi. If you have any thoughts, please leave them below in the chat, whether it's on Twitch or on YouTube. If you made it this far, bless you and bless your face. Maybe you sneezed, maybe you didn't. I'll catch you on the flippity flop.